I'm Jay. I am from the Philippines. I'm here on a master's program. So I'm going to be talking about the Philippines in general, particularly the educational system of the Philippines, with emphasis on the school system and, of course, the experiences of the Filipinos, particularly the Filipino school children. The structure will be, I'm going to start with a macro perspective of the Philippines, like in a nutshell. How is the Philippines like? What is the Philippines? Where is the Philippines? The context where this presentation is going to be about. And then we're going to take a look at the different transformations in the Philippines, not only historically, but in terms of policies and structures as well. And then third, we're going to take a look at the realities of schooling in the Philippines. And lastly, some possible research topics that those people who are interested about the Philippine educational system might venture into. The context, it's a mix of historical, geographic, demographic, economic, and social overview of the Philippines. So geographically, if you take a look at the world map, we all know that the Philippines, or not all of us might know, that the Philippines is actually from Southeast Asia. So it's the small archipelagic country there. So that's the Philippines. It's really small. It's only like 300,000 square kilometers in area. So in terms of the political divisions, or subdivisions, the country in general is composed of 17 regions. I think the closest equivalent of a region in the United States would be your idea of the Midwest. That's the closest thing to it as far as my analogy would be. So if you try to look at the map, it would be the colored areas, like the purple one up there, is a region. And so now each region is composed of different provinces. So the total number of provinces in the Philippines is 80 provinces. So the equivalent of this would be your states, so like Illinois. And then the towns, we have like the equivalent cities or the smaller like cities or towns. I think you could understand that, right? So it's 1,512 towns total in the Philippines. And the smallest political unit in the Philippines is called the barangay. This is equivalent to the Spanish barrio or a village or a community. So total is 42,025 communities all in all in the Philippines. So in terms of demographics, the population as projected by the CA World Fact book currently has 103,775,002 people in the Philippines. If you rank it comparative to the other countries in the world, it's the 12th largest country in terms of population, not wealth. Okay, and then the population growth of the Philippines annually is 1.9%. So if you look at this graph, it shows the population change of the Philippines or growth of the Philippines from 1990 until the year 2010. From 1990 to 2010, there has been a 2.3% growth rate. But from 2000 to 2010, it's 1.90. So at least it has been curbed a bit to some extent. So we're kind of happy about it, but it's not still really that happy. So the point is that why I'm trying to show you the population growth, because as population grows, necessarily there's also a growth in the demand of school. There's also a growth in the number of school children, because after 5 or 6 years that they're born, there's this demand for school and different resources that should be provided for them. So last 2010, there's 38.5 million population of school kids in the Philippines. So that's like 44%. So almost half of the population is of school age. So in terms of the government, we are happy to say that the Philippines is a democratic and a Republican state. We have been through dictatorship as well. We have been through oppression. We have been through political instabilities. But we are a democratic country. Now, we have 3 different branches of government, similar to the United States. We have the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So I think that you understand this. The executive, which is the implementing body of different policies and laws, is vested in the president of the Philippines. We also have the legislative branch, which does the lawmaking part. It's vested in the Congress, which is bicameral. meaning it has two houses. We have the House of Senate, which has 24 senators. And then we have the House of Representatives having 200 and plus representatives from the different provinces that I have mentioned a while ago. So the members of, and then we also have the judiciary, which is vested in the Supreme Court. It's the highest court of the land, and there are also some lower courts in different regions, provinces, and towns as well. So the president and the members of the Congress are elected by popular vote. So, and then the members of the Supreme Court, like the justices, are not elected. They're appointed by the president. So in terms of the economy, the unemployment rate of the Philippines is 7%. That's equivalent to 2.8 million people who do not have jobs. And then the poverty rate of the Philippines, I think we have to define what poverty, I'm using the framework of the World Bank here, that a person is poor if he earns less than $1 a day. That's moderate poverty, but if he earns $1.25 a day, that's extreme poverty. So I'm only looking at a moderate poverty. That's a person who earns less than $1 a day. That's 26.5% of the population, and that's equivalent to 27.5 million people who earn less than $1 a day. And that's equivalent to just 80 pesos. And just to give a clear picture about it, a decent meal in the Philippines would normally cost 50 pesos. So if you only earn 80 pesos a day, that means you can only buy one decent meal a day. And what if you're earning for your family? It's going to be really very problematic. So the average monthly family income of a average Filipino family is $430 in pesos. That will be 17,200. And that's a bit high if you try to look at it. And I'm also surprised knowing that it's 17,200. But of course, we know that this is an average, and sometimes average could be misrepresentative because there are some extreme earners also in the Philippines that push the average upward. There's also this average monthly family expenditure, which is 14,700. You see that if you try to get the net income minus the expenditure, there seems like 3,000 savings of the family, but that's on an average. I'm not saying everyone is, but on an average, a family could be able to save approximately 3,000 a month. So at a macro level, in general, the Philippine economy has been growing. I always say, Sophie, I always tell Sophie that I'm so proud my country's economy is growing. But I would not say that, I would say this is happening, but I don't feel like it's really trickling down yet. But at least in terms of the statistics, it's growing. So you see that in the Aquino administration, it has been elevated really well comparative to the previous administration. So the society at large is a very diverse society. If you try to look at the map, that is the ethno-linguistic map of the Philippines. It's the indigenous peoples map. So you see that there are different colors. Those colors represent the different ethnic groups in the Philippines. So you see, there's a lot of it. In fact, we have 110, more than 110 ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines, or like, let's just say ethnic groups so that you'd be able to like imagine it. We have more than 110 ethnic groups in the Philippines, and that's 11% of the entire population. So if you try to count it like numerically, it's 11,320,476 indigenous peoples in the Philippines. So now, so this is a huge mix of different people, of diverse people, of different cultures, and they call themselves Filipinos. Okay, so generally at present in contemporary Philippine society, there would be 4 major groups that we could think of, aside from these different ethno-linguistic groups, because this has been complicated by the history of the Philippines, the colonial history of the Philippines. If you try to like take a look at this slide. In the pre-colonial tribes, it's only the indigenous peoples that were living in the Philippines. But this has been complicated by the Spanish occupation for 333 years, and the American occupation for 41 years, and the Japanese occupation for 3 years. I didn't place it there anymore because it's relatively considerably less compared to these 2 different waves of rulers. So today we have 4 distinct groups. We have the ethnic Malay. They are the indigenous peoples who would trace their roots from the mainland Asia And then we also have the Islamized ethnic, those indigenous peoples too, but are more affiliated to Islam. And then we have the lowland Christian folks. These are the people who stayed in the lowlands, but were Hispanized. They were influenced so much by the Spanish occupation, and we also have the Americanized populace. Ironically, the lowland Christian folk and the Americanized populace are already, at present, considered the mainstream, while the ethnic Malay and the Islamized ethnic, who were originally the indigenous of the Philippines, are no longer the mainstream, like the other. So let's take a look at the transformations. The transformations in terms of the historically, like what happened in Philippine education through time, as well as in terms of policy, what has been the transformations that had been taking place there. So the historical transformation of Philippine education. So if you try to look at the transformations in the Philippines, there would be this pre-colonial period and the colonial period. And of course, we have today the post-war or the post-colonial period. But for purposes of comparison, I would just deal with the pre-colonial and the colonial as of now. So in the pre-colonial, this is before 1500s, particularly before 1565, before the coming of the Spaniards to the Philippines. And then we have in the colonial period, the Spanish occupation from 1565 to 1898, and the American occupation from 1898 to 1946, and the Japanese occupation from 1942 to 1994. I'm inspired of a game here, so. So in terms of how they do their education, it's informal and unstructured and incidental. Let me explain this a bit, because I was trying to read Philippine education history, and then I read something that tells me that the pre-colonial education in the Philippines did not have a method. And I was telling Sophie that it can't be possible that they didn't have a method in the Philippines. I feel like it's too condescending to say that pre-colonial education in the Philippines is didn't have any sense of method at all. And Sophie was saying maybe no method was the method. But I wouldn't say that, because still that's a bit condescending too. So we'd say that it's just informal and unstructured, simply because there are no structures for schooling. There are no specific processes for it. There's no like this particular strategy that they do, or not necessarily institutionalized or structured. So it's incidental, because when you need to learn something, that's the time you learn it. It's not like you have to go to school every day, and sometimes you don't see the practical import of going to school sometimes. So I would say that the method has been show and tell. It's imitation. So you look at your mom or your dad and go hunting. So that's show and tell. And it's for purposes of survival and conformity. It's education for socialization. So the closest thing that I could imagine as a way of schooling in the Philippines in the pre-colonial times would be the experience of the children who are trained to become priests, women priests, or the priestess, because they were called babaylan. So they were taught how to read the sky, the stars. They're taught to cure people. So that's the closest imagination I have of a school in the Philippines. Not to say that we didn't have schools, not to say that we didn't have methods at all. We had. And so they also learn indigenous language, because the different ethno-linguistic groups that I mentioned a while ago, 110 that I've mentioned, have their own scripts, their alphabet, and their language too. So it's a rich culture. Now, during the Spanish occupation, it was primarily religious education that they taught us. It was elitist, because not everyone could go to school during the Spanish occupation, primarily because only the mestizos and the middle class and the upper class could go to Spanish schools or Catholic schools, because they said that the Indios, the Filipinos, were not fit for school because they're uncivilized and things like that. So it was elitist, it was exclusivist. It was also formal. The method is dictation and rote learning, so they just memorized texts, prayers, and many others. And they also taught Spanish language. But do not be misled that we know how to speak Spanish. We don't, because the educational system itself was elitist. And so if I were in the Spanish colonization, I would not be able to go to school, because I'm not from the middle or upper class after all. Hence, I could not speak Spanish. Comparatively, during the American occupation, it was a nationalist, democratic education because they were training us to regain our independence, which ironically took quite a long time for them to give our independence because they freed us from Spanish occupation 1898, but we only got our independence from 1946. So it's like a 40 year of preparation to be independent. So it's kind of ironic, but at least we were liberated after that. So it's a nationalist democratic education because they were preparing us for a democracy, which we now enjoy. It's nationalist because they were teaching us about our heroes, about the legacy and the heritage of the Filipino people. It was more practical education that they gave us. It's technical and vocational, sewing, carpentry, construction, mechanic, and things like that. It was a formal education too, but most of all, the best part of the educational system that we inherited would be a free public education. They made education free for everyone. And they taught us English, which some people say would be imperialist and colonial, but we now reap like we're so lucrative for business process outsourcing. You might be talking to somebody about your credit card and you might not know it's from the Philippines because we have this convincing English, according to some people. So for the Japanese occupation, this is more of character education, like an education that we have to stand for by ourselves or on our own. Because remember, during World War II, they wanted that Asia is for Asians. So they wanted to like champion this Asian consciousness. So they taught us this nationalist and this character education. They taught us the love and dignity of work, that we have to be committed. I suppose you understand, like, of course, the Japanese culture. And Nihongo as well. But not everyone could speak Nihongo because it's only 3 years that they stayed in the Philippines. So so from the pre-colonial, which is for survival, from the Spanish, which is religious, American, which is practical, and Japanese is more of character education, we take a look at contemporary education today. So there's a dichotomy in Philippine education of public schools and private schools. And public schools are divided also into different types. So let's start with the regular school. The regular school in the Philippines is a school where you go in order to be prepared for the university. So if you plan to go to a university, you go to a regular school. We also have a vocational school. A vocational school is otherwise called a trade school. A trade school is where they teach you how to, like, food technology, construction, mechanic, drafting, and things like that. This is the kind of school that people go to when they do not have plans of going to the university, when they just want to earn money after high school. And more or less, these people, the people who go to these vocational schools were people who cannot afford university. We also have special schools. Special schools are of two types. One for the children with special needs, and the second one will be the exceptional kids who have this, who are believed to have high potential for math or science. So people who are smart enough could go to a special science high school, while people who have kids with special needs would go to a special education school. And we also have the madrasa, which is, of course, a public school for the Muslims. Public education in the Philippines is free. Public elementary and public secondary education in the Philippines is really free because it's provided by the Constitution, Section 2, Paragraph 2 of Article 14. The private schools, on the other hand, is also dichotomous. We have the sectarian schools and the non-sectarian schools. By sectarian schools, we mean the religious schools. These are schools that are managed or run by specific religious denominations like Catholic schools, Protestant schools like Methodist, Baptist schools in the Philippines. And the non-sectarian schools would be the schools that are actually corporations. These are schools that are owned by different individuals, not necessarily religious. And interesting is that there's this pervasive notion about private schools as better schools than the public schools. And I think that sometimes it's really true, except for public education in special schools in the Philippines that are sometimes at par with the quality of education in the private schools. So normally, private schools in the Philippines is for the middle or upper class, while public schools is for everyone, but majority of which will be from the lower classes. So in terms of the curriculum shift, this is the kind of curriculum that we have practiced before June of 2012, before this year, this is the kind of curriculum that we were using. It's a 10-year basic education program where preschool, elementary school, and high school is part of it. College, I just added the university just to have a picture of how extensive is the educational system. So preschool is just 1 year. It's for 5-year-old. It's not compulsory. It's optional. Elementary is 6 years, so 6 to 11. And then high school is 12 to 16. And then if you finish and you have money, you could go to a university. But comparing that to the current curriculum that we have, so we're going to compare it. So whatever it is that you see below is the one that I have just shown you. And what you see above will be the curriculum that has recently been implemented. So you recall that preschooling is optional. Basic education is just 10 years. You start from 5 when you're 5, and you end when you're 16. Because that's just 6 years plus 4 years of elementary and high school respectively is 10. So we call it a K-10 curriculum. But recently, last June of 2012, they implemented the K plus 12. You know, you call it K-12 here. We call it K plus 12. I don't know. They just modified it. They just tried to appropriate it in the Philippines. And so they started with kindergarten, which is now compulsory. That's why the K there is kindergarten. And then you add 12 more years. So let's explain how the 12-year period happens. Elementary schooling is still 6 years. You see that it didn't change. But high school is now 6 years compared to 4 years previously in the old curriculum. So, and then if you try to look at the ages, so it's like you start at 5 years, compulsory, you have to take kindergarten. I didn't go to kindergarten because it was not compulsory. And then 6 to 11, you go to elementary school. And then from 12 to 16, you are a junior high schooler. And then 17 to 18, that's senior high school, where they teach you specific subjects that you want to take. Like you could have a technical vocational track. You could have like university preparatory track. Or you could have a sports performing arts or humanities and things like that. So you more or less finish college at 22. In my case, I finished college at 20 or 21 because I was part of the old curriculum. So they're saying that the Philippine educational system now has the following features, and they're kind of proud of it because they say that there's universal kindergarten, so all kids will undergo kindergarten. And then they say that the kind of curriculum that they're going to be using is contextualized and enhanced, meaning that it's more relevant now to the ways of life of people. Because the problem before is that people undergo this liberal education. So they study history, math, science, and things like that. And they go out to the real world and they can't find a job after high school. And so now they're making it more relevant. So what do they teach us? They teach us to do domestic work. They teach us to do healthcare provision, cooking, baking, barista, and things like that. Because they say that if we do that, we could actually find a better job after and help our family and, be freed from poverty, according to them. They also do this spiral progression. I think this is a pedagogical approach. I can't explain it. I'm not an expert in curriculum. But what I think is that spiral progression is you just tackle a bit of everything and then build on it along the way. I hope you can imagine it. And then there's this mother tongue-based instruction. You remember a while ago that we have different ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines. The thing is, they're going to use from grade 1, first grade to third grade, they're going to use the mother tongue. So for example, if you're from an indigenous community, you're going to use your mother tongue in instruction, as a medium of instruction, from first grade to third grade. And then from fourth to sixth, you're going to start using the national language, which is Tagalog or Filipino. And they're gearing up for the future, the senior high school, because they want us to be more competitive, internationally more competitive, because when we go to Europe, for example, they cannot admit us to the university because we do not comply to the Bologna thing, because we only finish high school schooling for 10 years. It's not 12. So they think that we have not learned enough or we're not prepared for university. Or even here, we have to do like, I'm not sure how, like transition schooling. so that we could go to a university here. So that's their purpose. So they added the senior high school to make us more competitive, to be at par or to be in synchrony with the rest of the world. And they also wanted us to teach, to have, or to acquire 21st century skills. These are actually soft skills of communication, critical thinking, teamwork, synergy, and things like that, the more corporatist discourse. So while it looks like it's beautiful because we have this curriculum change and we're democratic, economy is growing, at the micro level, I'm going to be presenting the experiences of the kids in the Philippines when they go to school. So what does it take for a Filipino kid or a Filipino child to go to school? So, sad realities, out of 6 kids who would enter the first grade, only one of them is not in school. So like 6 kids who are supposed to be in school is not, one child out of 6 is not in school, sorry. And then out of 10 Filipino children who would enroll the first grade, only 7 will complete the elementary schooling. And out of this 7 who will successfully complete grade school, only 4 will complete high school. And sadly, out of these 4 people who would have the possibility of going to the university, make a guess. How many will make it to the university or finish? 2? 1. Only 1. So I'm lucky I'm one of the 4. And this has a lot of socioeconomic and political implications. So why is this happening? Why are children not going to school? Why are they dropping out? Why is it that only 4 out of the original 10 that entered in the first grade could finish high school? Well, because going to school isn't fun and easy as this. We can't afford the school bus. We don't have free lunches in school. So let's abandon this framework. Because sometimes, if not always, kids have to do the following to be able to attend school. So you have to walk several kilometers to go to school. You have to be brave enough, and you have to be immune from the leptospirosis when you walk in flooded streets. You have to cross rivers using that improvised boat. You have to travel via this bangka or boat for like 30 minutes. Or you have to be on a top load of a public transportation that's kind of dangerous. I've never tried that. I'm scared. So there, it's dangerous. Or worse, you have to build your own zip line to cross from one mountain to another just to go to school. There are lots of stories about kids doing this. And I hope I could tell you more of that some other time. So some kids have to sell their own produce, like rice cakes that their moms would make on their way to school, or some crops or vegetables that they would carry to go to school. So along the way, when people see them, they just buy from them, and then so they would have something to pay for their paper, pen, because it's not free in the Philippines. Some kids have to cross rivers, not river. We have some kids have to cross rivers. Some have to climb mountains to go to school. I'm not exaggerating. This is happening, and there are documentaries that are that have documented this. Some even swim for like 20 or some 40 minutes crossing the ocean. I've seen a documentary like kids go to school and then they would carry a backpack, and before from school, they would carry a backpack, and then they would carry a plastic bag too, and then they put the stuff. Before they go home, they put the stuff in the plastic bag, and they bury it in the sand and cover it, and then they would swim to go home. And then the next day, they will swim again, and then they will dig their stuff and bring it to school. And it happens every day. So sometimes, if the kind of experience in education that you have is that kind, then sometimes I would say giving up is the better option than struggling for your dreams. Some kids might be lucky to be able to make it to school, but once you're at school, you still have to endure lots of other things, like you have to be creative to cross from one classroom to another using your own chairs. You have to be lumped together in a small classroom. Like, for example, this is called a multi-grade classroom. Multi-grade because in a classroom, there are like 3 grades that are there, like first grade, second grade, and third grade mixed together, only divided by the blackboards. Sometimes you're lucky if you have a blackboard, because some kids do not have a blackboard. Some kids do not have classrooms, too. And worst, you might not have a school after the typhoon. So basic public education in the Philippines is free. But I would say that it's not about making education free, because if your people is poor, like 26% of your people is poor, then it doesn't make any sense. So it's not enough that public education is free. It should be both free and accessible. It's not like you'd say, I have a piece of cake, but it's located in the mountain, so you just go there, it's free. But it's kind of unfair to those people who would live from the lowlands, right, to climb. And it might favor some other people who might be closer to it. So it's not enough that education is free. The discourse of free public education is not enough. That's what I'm arguing. However, it may not always be that bad, because public education in the Philippines is really problematic, but we also have private education. So we have fancy buildings, we have green campus, we have enough textbooks in private schools. Sometimes kids do not even use textbooks, they use tablets, and we have smart boards too. But sad is that 6% of elementary students only experience this kind of privilege, and 63% of high school students experience this, and 85% of college students experience this. Don't get me wrong, because you might be saying, how come I'm showing those sad pictures, and you see here that 63% of high school students experience this, and 85% experience this. Well, you would understand, if you try to go back to the statistics I've shown you, there's this decreasing number of enrollees as you go up the ladder of the educational system. So more or less, those people who survive are the richer ones or the better off. So, hence, they're the better off, and they could afford a more expensive education, so they go to private schools. So there is hope. I would say there is hope, because they say that seat shortage will be eliminated this 2013, and I'm kind of positive about it. Textbook shortage will also be eliminated. Classroom shortage will be down to 6,000 from 36,000. So to be able to construct 30,000 classrooms in a year is really great for a government. So I'm happy and proud of it. They're going to hire 61,000 more teachers because of the partnership with private companies and local governments too. But still, we have to be more critical about this. And I would say, in general, that good governance has been a key to the economic growth that the Philippines is experiencing. And it might also be the key to the provision and the realization of educational needs. Because before, we cannot meet educational goals and needs because corruption is just everywhere. Corruption is just pervasive. Like, for example, we allot 100 million for textbooks. The thing is, as it goes down to the bureaucracy, from the national government to the local government, the monsters will actually take a piece of the cake. And then once it's down, it's only 1/10 of the cake. And so the poor kids have to share in that 1/10 that the monsters actually, already got and pocketed. So, research futures, well, the discourse of free public education and the reality of access. It's an interesting topic that we could talk about. So, will the K-12 curriculum really work? Will it promise be realized, or will it be fulfilled? What kind of Filipinos will emerge from this kind of curriculum? The assessment of the public and private partnership is necessary because it might be providing results, but there might be some different stakeholders that might be sacrificed as well. Does the government's vision for the educated Filipino in the new curriculum coincide with the perspective, with the imagination of the school children and the teachers? It might be that they want these Filipinos to be like this, but the kids do not care at all, or the teachers do not care, or they have a different imagination. So what happens to citizenship and democratic education when we train our school children for vocational work, for work abroad? What happens to citizenship and democratic and nationalist education? So that would be all. Yeah. Questions?
We have about 8 minutes for questions.
Okay. Virgie.
How does Filipino government synchronize the uniqueness of the needs of 110 ethnic groups with the government vision or vision and whatsoever?
Okay.
Yeah,
That's kind of problematic because previously I did a research on indigenous peoples, and I would say that there has been a problem in representing these groups not only in textbooks, but in terms of policy as well. I'm trying to look at the documents that the Department of Education used for this curriculum, for the K+12 curriculum, and I cannot see how they're going to address it. It seems like they're kind of dismissive about it. They're silent about it, and so it's an interesting piece that we could study. So if you're asking me how are they going to harmonize and synchronize it, I think they're doing it in terms of the mother tongue-based instruction. But the problem is indigenous groups are not living in their specific niches. They're actually geographically mobile as well. So what happens when a person from Mindanao, a Muslim, who speaks his own specific language, goes to the metropolis and they speak Tagalog? That's problematic. Or like everyone is everywhere. So how, that's going to be like hegemonic as well, right? Because whatever is dominant in a specific region will be imposed on those people who are geographically mobile as well. So I think that's an interesting topic, and I don't think that there's a clear vision of the government about it as of now. Yes, Mark.
Okay, so you mentioned that 36,000 new classrooms have been built.
Yeah.
So I was wondering with the building of those new classrooms, are they putting them in some of these sort of poor areas where less able to reach, so they don't have to climb an extra mountain to get to a good school? That's my first question. And then also second, how are they designing these schools? Are they trying to make them sort of much more technologically adept so these kids who are in primary school can sort of leap over some of the, imposed disadvantage of being in a poor area and then also having to suffer through these old traditional methods?
Okay. On the first question, you're asking, has it been built in the remote areas? Well, I would say not really. So what they do is just, as far as I know, they just add more classrooms to these already existing schools and not making new schools for the far-flung areas. I think, yeah, that's problematic. Although they're making schools for these far-flung areas, but in terms of the comparatively to the rate of number of schools that are established in far-flung areas and classrooms there in far-flung areas to those that are added in already existing schools, I think there are more classrooms that are built for already existing schools. Your second question is like, are they technologically adopted and things like that? Not really, because we still have to most of the technologically advanced schools are still in the metropolis or in the cities, while those people, schools in the far-flung areas still have to deal with the blackboard, pencil, chalk, talk thing there. Yes, Saber.
You know what the transition from the 10-year to the 12-year curriculum looks like on the ground?
Okay.
If you're a first-year university student, you have to go back to 11th grade.
No.
Even just what that means for the labor market, because in a couple of years, you'll have people out there with 10-year degrees being evaluated against people with 12-year degrees.
Okay, it's like this. They just started the curriculum June of 2012. Classes in the Philippines start in June compared to different from here and other parts of the world. So June 2012, only the seventh grade, grade 7. The 7th grade will have to endure the 6 years of high school education. So it's like there will be it will only start on 2018. So that's but those people who are senior high school now or junior or sophomores are not affected of the K+12. Only those grade 7th or 7th grade now will be experiencing this and the succeeding ones. Yes, Sophie.
You mentioned this checking of some, is it like senior high school, that some students go to academic checks
Yeah.
and go to vocational
Yeah.
checks? How did that happen?
What do you mean,
How do you decide? Is it based on students or performances or need or what?
Actually, that's kind of unclear too in the policy, because it seems like when I was reading the documents, it seems like they are given the option to do so. So if you want to do technical vocational after junior high school, you could do that. And then if you want to do this university preparation, you could do that. And then performing arts or languages, you could do that too. So it's up to you. So it's kind of scary too, because it's like, it might be the death of the humanities or what. So it's optional. It's up to you. It's not going to be imposed by the government. Yes. Okay. Teacher training in the Philippines is a bachelor, you get a bachelor's degree, and then you take a licensure examination. That's one track. So it's like a bachelor in education, and then you do practice teaching, and you also do observation, and then graduate, take the licensure exam, and then teach. That's the first track. The second track is like you're not from the education field, but you could take units for teaching, and then take the licensure exams too. So it's a mix of different teachers that are. Oh yeah, yes. In my case, I'm a teacher in the Philippines, but I'm from the second track. So I just took some education units and took the licensure.